Matt, am I allowed to call you Matt first off?
Sure. I mean, I normally go by Matthew, but Matt is just fine.
Sometimes on projects or your podcast, you're Matt. So Matt, Matthew, how is your day going? And thank you for taking the time.
No, my day is going great. Thank you so much for having me.
It is a pleasure to be connected with you. When did you know that you were going to Impact versus debuting? What was the lead time on that?
Trying to think. God, sometimes it feels like it happens all so fast. I would say probably maybe about a month or so. Like it's not a crazy long. This isn't something, that was in the work for months and months, but yeah, probably 4 or 5 weeks is when, it was like, hey, let's talk. Here's this idea. What do you think? A little bit of back and forth. And then it kind of all culminated in Homecoming.
Did you know outright that you were going to get the vignette debut treatment as opposed to who is that? That kind of a thing?
Sure. No, that was one of the, like I said, in those discussions, one of the things we talked about was, hey, let's tease this out a little bit. We're not just going to throw you out of nowhere, which I always like, because that was something I always felt like could have been done more in my previous run. I think, especially with a character like mine, even if it's just a little bit. And that's how I loved what Impact did, is just, it needs a little bit of like intro. We need to know, even if it's just a mood and a vibe and a something, you know what I mean? Instead of just throwing someone out there and having to guess what they are and what they're like. My persona, my character, this drama king, sometimes it does need a little bit of an intro like that, a little bit of a way to show you who he is.
Yeah, putting words in your mouth here. I have to imagine that this is where you wanted to be in terms of being able to work on a variety of projects, being able to be yourself and sometimes not be yourself publicly.
110%. I mean, I've come to do so many things that I've fallen in love with recently. But my first love is wrestling. And so to be able to do that at a high level and on a large platform, and to do it and have a little bit of that creative ability to express myself at like I said, at a high level, is very, very rewarding.
It's cool to hear the dynamic of you and Deanna on your podcast versus seeing it on the air, how different it is. You're the dominant personality on TV, and then on your podcast, she takes it over pretty quickly.
She is not only, because for those that haven't went, please youtube.com/wrestlingwithwhiskey. So I was talking about her and her beau, Steve Macklin. And yeah, so there's 3 of us, and she took charge of that whole thing. She is a take charge kind of woman, kind of performer. She's awesome. And I would even argue that even when we are on screen together, when we're working on Impact together, she does her fair share of taking charge as well. She's phenomenal at what she does.
Now, Straight Shooting is that podcast, and we hear Impact talent on there. We just hear talent from all different paths of your life. How long was it from having the idea to do that show to actually getting it up and running? I asked that because some people for 10 years said that they were going to be doing a podcast before they actually have that first episode out into the world.
So, luckily I'd been doing the channel, just, typical whiskey reviews, tastings, news, stuff like that. So I kind of already had the little bit of a base audience there. I had already known how to at least make videos and stuff. So I had a little bit of a jump start, and I was just looking for something to diversify the content. And I'd never planned to be podcaster, interviewer guy, but between wanting to give a different format to the whole interview process and maybe introduce people to something that they don't think there's much to, like whiskey. I think a lot of people think it's a lot of people just think it's something you kind of shoot back, chase it with a beer and forget it. And, stuff I'm like, I want to show people that they can appreciate it. So even if I don't turn them into me, the biggest whiskey nerd ever, I might show them oh, okay, this is better than just hot brown fire water. There might be some taste and some interesting flavor here. And that complemented with some chat about, wrestling and life and everything in between. And maybe people learn something both about the spirit and the spirit of the person I'm talking to.
Oh, I see what you did there.
I like that.
Wow, very punny. One of the catches or the interesting traits of your interviews on your podcast is that the people are drinking 3 blind samples. I'm curious if that came from Flaviar, the idea of, hey, here's 3 things of the whiskey persuasion. Enjoy.
Wow, you know Flaviar. You're in the world a little bit.
I cover spirits and wrestling, so this is kind of a perfect overlap right here.
No, so I had tried actually Flaviar before, but no, honestly, my kind of inspiration for the format was Hot Ones.
Oh,
so I'm like, wow, they've had such great success because it's just an interview show with it when on paper, but I'm like,
right.
But they're trying this thing that which throws a little like people reacting to the hot sauce and all this stuff. And I was like, man, what if you could do that with whiskey? And I was like, but man, I'm like, I ain't sending people 10 whiskeys and expecting them to stand up by the end of the interview. And I'm like, that might cause some trouble. So I'm like, well, you know what? Let's just break it down. I'll do 3 just small things. And again, just try to see if people can kind of get a little bit of an appreciation for it. And so, yeah, shout out to Hot Ones for at least a little bit of the base inspiration for the show.
You clearly know more about whiskey than anyone else in the Impact locker room, but who would you say maybe knows the second most?
Ooh, that's a good question.
And
I haven't.
If this is going to break image, you can say next question.
No. Because I'm trying to think. There are some people who enjoy it. I don't know if there's anybody who's really, really into it. I would say probably Eric Young. And I've had him on the show. He actually has gone with me on a barrel pick of bourbon that I did with a group of friends of mine. We went out and picked a barrel. He was with us when we picked the first one. And so he's not like super geeky like I am, but he does enjoy it. Like I actually just went to his house the last time I was in Nashville, and he's got a nice bar set up where, you know, if you've got more than like 3 whiskeys, you're probably a fan, because most people just grab Jack Daniels and something else and keep it for Jack and Cokes. But no, he's got several whiskeys, and so we always have a good time chatting about it.
Wow. People, you mentioned your YouTube channel before, which plug it again. What is it?
YouTube.com/wrestling with whiskey.
One of my favorite things that you have on there is you critiquing people's whiskey collections. And we learned quickly that you do not take kindly to flavored whiskeys or proper number 12. But are there any celebrity whiskeys that you do think are done really well?
No, that's totally fine. I will give a lot of credit to this one. Blew my mind, and I like, it almost makes me shake my head just say it. But Slipknot's whiskey is not bad, and like it's one of those. Sometimes it doesn't, you know, in the whiskey. If you meet someone, you know, if you partner with someone who knows the whiskey world pretty well, you know where to, because a lot these guys aren't going into distilleries and mashing the grain themselves, and they're working with partners and companies and stuff to help them curate a whiskey and put their name on it usually. And so if you know the whiskey, there's a couple of really great distilleries you can source barrels from that 9 times out of 10 are probably going to be pretty good. You dump those into a bottle, they're going to be good. But batch after batch, and like I've had a couple of it, you know, wasn't a one hit thing. They're I forget what it's called. I think it's like number 4 or number 6, something from Slipknot.
Yeah.
They so whatever they did, they sourced or they partnered with someone who blended it well. Like it's a pretty solid option. I will give them a lot of credit for that one.
So I think I know the answer to this. If you're not into flavored kind of whiskeys, where are you at with canned cocktails? Because in the spirits industry, everyone has a hard seltzer and a canned cocktail these days.
So I'm a proponent of canned cocktails. I think it's the RTD industry has grown a lot. We've seen things like White Claw and Truly explode. I think it's leveled out a little bit, but it's still a very strong sector of the business. So that's why you've seen a lot of companies that traditionally only distilled spirits are now putting out carbonated, you know, canned seltzers or canned cocktails and everything. I think it's interesting. I know Jim Beam makes a really great canned highball that they just released.
Yes.
And it's actually really nice. It's a super great. It's refreshing for a day, you know, especially in the hot Chicago summers. It's not, I don't always want a barrel proof neat pour of, you know, Elijah Craig or something like that. As much as I love it, when it's 95 degrees out, that ain't going to quench it. So it's nice to have something you can keep in the fridge on hand, ready. You can maybe offer to guests without having to do a whole ton of work. So I'm actually all for it.
So all that said, you sound like you're doing exactly what it is that you want to do between seeing you on Impact every week, between your podcasting, but long-term goals here, do you eventually hope to have your own whiskey and or lead tastings or tours?
Everybody asks the your own whiskey question, and the answer to that is complicated. Like maybe, but in the short term, like no. Because here's the thing: I don't want to be what I just said. I don't want to just slap my name. Number one, I'm not quite famous enough to sell thousands of cases of it yet. But even if I was, I don't want to be the guy who just slaps his name on something that goes, here, go sell this and make me money. You know what I mean? If I was going to do it, I'd be doing it from the ground floor, baby, because I am nerdy about this stuff. I'd be in there with the hard hat, sticking my finger in the mash tub and going, nah, like we got to do this again. And until I'm able to do that, probably not. But would I love to host like tasting events and stuff like that? Yes, absolutely. You know, please, like that's me. I find my strongest skill outside of wrestling is like getting people excited about the things I'm excited about. Mm-hmm. And so if I could do that on a large scale, whether it's just events in the city here or like going on tour with a brand to promote X whiskey or XYZ, that would be so much fun just to be able to turn people on to something that I really love.
Acting aspirations, are those still there? Because yes, you are acting on television every week per se, but the word was that back in the day, you were going to be the first wrestler to make it to Broadway.
You know what? I would still love to make that come true because you got TV and film are the obvious transitions for so many people. And wrestling has obviously seen some incredible personalities make that jump. But no offense to Cena or Batista or anybody, but it takes real guts to step on a stage in front of a live audience. And then wrestling events are an incredible, that's a live audience, but I'm just saying it's a different environment when you're in that intimate theater and you're reciting lines. You're not just talking off the cuff or doing suplexes. It's a different medium. I'm not saying one's harder than the other. It's a different medium. And I would love the chance to be able to do that again. 100%.
Last question. You mentioned your town of Chicago, beautiful, wonderful town for wrestling and beyond. If somebody's saying, hey, what is the best whiskey bar in town? Do you have a pick or two to pass along?
Ooh. Well, first, Delilah's is a world-renowned whiskey bar on the north side of the city. Incredible selection, great, kind of an old punk rock bar, but like it's known around the world now. So that's the primary go-to one. The other one I would say would be this little motorcycle bar called Twisted Spoke, and it's a really cool little place in Westtown Chicago. Great whiskey list. I don't know if they still do it, but I know before COVID and everything, they do Whiskey Wednesdays, half price on all whiskeys in the whole place. And so it was always a great place to go out and try a new pour. Like before I went and buy a bottle, I'll go to the Spoke and I'll try it there. So those would be my two go-tos.
Paltrocast.